Hello everyone, welcome back to the Strike Point Media channel, and before we begin, please subscribe and like this video because what we are about to share is one of the most shocking updates of the war. The breaking news is that 93 Ukrainian drones stormed Moscow, leaving the Russian capital shaken and parts of the city engulfed in flames. This event is not only about destruction, but it also represents a complete shift in the way modern warfare is being fought. What once seemed like science fiction has become a harsh reality on the streets of one of the world's most heavily defended cities. Stay with me throughout this video as we examine what happened, the scenes of chaos outside and inside, the performance of these drones, the safety features involved, the unique aspects of this mission, the cost of carrying out such an operation, and finally, what all of this means for the future of war. The night began quietly in Moscow, with most people settling into their routines, unaware that a storm of machines was already on its way. Deep in the skies, approaching from multiple directions, a swarm of Ukrainian drones was moving like a dark wave. On Russian radar screens, dozens of small signals appeared almost simultaneously. Operators realized quickly that this was not a random incursion. This was coordinated, deliberate, and overwhelming. Within minutes, the city's air raid sirens began to howl, waking millions of residents. Outside, the exterior of Moscow changed instantly from calm night to a terrifying battlefield. Witnesses heard the eerie buzzing sound of drones cutting through the air. Explosions erupted across the skyline as fuel depots, warehouses, and parts of industrial zones were struck. Flames rose high enough to reflect on the glass towers of the business district. It was a scene of chaos and disbelief. Streets filled with smoke, car alarms screamed, and fire brigades rushed through intersections as more impacts rattled the ground. Inside the city, the atmosphere was tense, fearful, and surreal. People rushed into metro stations, basements, and underground passages, desperate for shelter. Parents clutched their children, elderly residents leaned on neighbors, and mobile phones lit up with a flood of urgent messages. Social media exploded with live videos showing bright trails in the sky, flashes of anti-aircraft fire, and sudden fireballs as drones either detonated on impact or were shot down. Even within underground shelters, residents could hear the distant thumps of explosions. The interior experience of the capital was one of vulnerability, and this was perhaps the greatest shock of all. For decades, Moscow was presented as invulnerable, shielded by sophisticated systems like the S-400 missile defense network and electronic warfare shield. Yet on this night, none of those measures stopped the drones completely. The fact that so many reached their targets turned the interior of Moscow into something unthinkable, a frontline city in the war. When we look at how these drones performed, the story becomes even more impressive and alarming. Ukraine did not send a few drones hoping for a lucky strike. Instead, they launched a swarm of 93, overwhelming the defenses by sheer volume. Some drones acted as decoys, forcing Russian defenses to waste valuable missiles. Others carried high-explosive payloads designed to ignite fuel tanks and warehouses. A few were equipped with cameras, transmitting real-time images back to Ukrainian control rooms to adjust targeting and monitor the effect of the strike. This layered strategy meant that even though many drones were shot down, enough got through to cause massive damage. The performance of this swarm revealed the effectiveness of quantity over quality in certain aspects of warfare. While Russia has invested billions in large missile systems, Ukraine used relatively inexpensive machines to create chaos in the heart of the Russian capital. Safety features in this context are a complex matter. On the Ukrainian side, the biggest safety advantage is that drones mean no pilots are put at risk. Operators can remain hundreds of kilometers away, directing the attack from secure locations. For Russia, however, safety meant scrambling to protect civilians. Fire brigades deployed across the city, medical teams prepared for casualties, and emergency shelters opened their doors. The problem is that safety measures can only do so much against a sudden onslaught. Glass shattered in residential buildings from shockwaves, cars burned in parking lots, and fires spread in industrial areas. Civilians were caught in the middle, and while Russian authorities claimed that most drones were intercepted, the flames lighting up the skyline told another story. The safety net in drone warfare is thin, and this attack highlighted how vulnerable modern cities are when targeted by swarms of small, fast, and numerous flying weapons. What makes this event unique is not just the destruction it caused, but the message it sent. 93 drones is not an ordinary number. It represents one of the largest coordinated drone assaults in history, and it was directed not at a remote battlefield, but at Moscow itself, the center of Russian political and military power. The symbolism of reaching so deep into enemy territory is powerful. It shows that Ukraine has the capability to strike far beyond the front lines and into areas Russia once thought untouchable. The uniqueness also lies in how this attack exposes the changing face of war. No longer are conflicts decided solely by tanks, artillery, or fighter jets. Now, swarms of inexpensive drones can challenge billion-dollar defense networks. The rules of the game have changed, and this strike proved it. When discussing cost, the comparison becomes even more striking. Each Ukrainian drone likely cost between $20,000 and $50,000, depending on its size and payload. Multiply that by 93, and the total cost of the operation might have been a few $1,000,000 at most. Russia, on the other hand, used advanced surfaced, where missiles costing hundreds of thousands of dollars each to shoot down drones worth a fraction of that. In some cases, a single interceptor missile may have been 10 or 20 times more expensive than the drone it destroyed. The price-to-impact ratio heavily favors Ukraine. This kind of economic asymmetry makes drone warfare sustainable for Ukraine and a nightmare for Russia, which must spend disproportionate resources to defend its skies. As we reflect on this attack, the conclusion becomes clear. The strike of 93 Ukrainian drones on Moscow was not just another chapter in the war. It was a turning point, a demonstration that no city is beyond reach, and that the battlefield now includes the skies over capitals. The exterior scenes of fire and destruction showed the raw power of swarm tactics. The interior scenes of fear and panic revealed the psychological shock that accompanies such strikes. The performance of the drones highlighted the effectiveness of mass technology. Safety measures, while crucial, were overwhelmed. The uniqueness of the strike lay in its scale, symbolism, and impact. The cost analysis exposed the imbalance between inexpensive drones and expensive defenses. Together, these factors tell us that the future of warfare is here, and it is defined by drones. This event will be remembered for years, not just for the flames it lit in Moscow, but for the way it illuminated the future of conflict. For Ukraine, it was proof of ingenuity, resilience, and determination. For Russia, it was a wake-up call that even the most fortified cities are not beyond the reach of determined adversaries. For the rest of the world, it was a warning that the technologies once dismissed as secondary are now at the forefront of global security challenges. The storm of drones over Moscow has rewritten the narrative of this war, and it has done so with fire, speed, and shock. As you watch this unfold, remember that wars are not only fought on the ground, but also in the skies, in the minds of people, and in the calculations of cost and impact. 93 drones did more than destroy targets. They changed perceptions, they altered strategies, and they reminded everyone that the future of war belongs to those who innovate faster. And with that, this breaking news becomes more than a headline. It becomes history in the making right before our eyes.